We're counting down the 10 black heroes they never told you about in school. From unsung inventors whose creations shaped modern life, to fearless pioneers, freedom fighters, and masterminds of social change, each person on this list broke barriers, with many of their stories hidden from textbooks for years. So, who made the cut? And which forgotten hero earned the top spot? Let's begin, starting with number 10. Oscar Micheaux didn't wait for Hollywood's permission. In 1919, he wrote, directed, and self-financed his first feature, launching a career that would span nearly 3 decades and produce over 40 films. At a time when the mainstream industry locked black voices out and peddled damaging stereotypes, Micheaux built his own path, writing stories that centered black ambition, struggle, and dignity. His 1920 film Within Our Gates pulled no punches. It confronted lynching and racial violence head-on, forcing audiences to reckon with the realities that white filmmakers ignored or twisted. Censors in Chicago and across the Midwest demanded cuts, but Micheaux refused to soften the truth. He battled state censorship boards again and again, defending his right to show black life honestly. Micheaux didn't just make movies, he created his own distribution network, delivering his films directly to black audiences in theaters across the country. His legacy isn't just about numbers, though producing over 40 features is a record few have matched. It's about the courage to tell stories that mattered, and the determination to ensure they reached the people who needed them most. Oscar Micheaux proved that black creativity could thrive, even in the face of erasure. Garrett Morgan spent his life solving problems that others ignored. In 1922, he filed a patent for a new kind of traffic signal, one that introduced a third position between stop and go. Before Morgan's design, intersections were chaos, with only 2 signals and no warning for drivers eager to move. His invention, granted U.S. Patent 1,475,024 in 1923, added a crucial all-stop interval. That simple idea, the pause between red and green, has saved countless lives every day since. Morgan's mind was always working. Years earlier, he invented a safety hood that protected workers from smoke and toxic gas. When a tunnel explosion trapped men deep beneath Lake Erie in 1916, Morgan and his brother put on his hoods and led a rescue that brought survivors out alive. Yet when it came time to sell his device, city officials and fire departments balked. Morgan was forced to use white intermediaries to market his inventions, his face and name hidden so his life-saving work could reach the people who needed it. The next time a yellow light flashes or a firefighter breathes safely in danger, Garrett Morgan's ingenuity is there, quietly shaping modern life, even if his name is missing from the textbooks. Bessie Coleman refused to let borders or prejudice ground her dreams. In 1921, after every American flight school turned her away because she was black and a woman, she set her sights on France. There, the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale awarded her an international pilot's license on June 15th, making her the first black and Native American woman in the world to earn those wings. The journey itself was a feat. Coleman learned French, raised money through beauty shop raffles and community drives in Chicago, and crossed an ocean for her chance to fly. She returned home as Queen Bess, dazzling crowds with loops, barrel rolls, and parachute jumps at air shows. Newspapers marveled at her daring, and black pilots clubs formed in her honor. Coleman used her fame to call out segregation at airfields, refusing to perform anywhere black spectators weren't welcome. Her story was more than a personal victory. It was a message to anyone told they didn't belong. The sky is wide open if you're bold enough to claim it. In 1966, Marie Van Britten Brown filed a patent for something that would become a fixture in millions of homes, the first video-based home security system. Living in Jamaica, Queens, Brown worked as a nurse, often returning home late at night. Her husband Albert worked odd hours too. Like many in their neighborhood, the Browns worried about slow police response and crime creeping closer to their doorstep. Instead of waiting for help, Marie designed her own solution. Her system was ingenious for its time. A camera mounted on the front door could slide up and down to look through 4 separate peepholes, capturing images of visitors no matter their height. Inside, a television monitor displayed the camera's feed, letting the homeowner see who was outside without opening the door. The Browns added a 2-way microphone and speaker so you could talk to whoever was knocking. If the visitor seemed suspicious, a button triggered a loud alarm to alert neighbors. And with another switch, you could even unlock the door remotely from the safety of your living room. The U.S. Patent Office granted Marie and Albert Brown patent number 3,482,037 in 1969. Trade journals and security experts now recognize her design as the direct ancestor of today's CCTV, video doorbells, and smart locks. But for years, her name was left out of the stories about the home security boom. Marie Van Britten Brown's invention was born out of necessity, but its impact reaches far beyond one family's peace of mind. Her blueprint for safety is now standard in homes and businesses around the world, yet her story is still missing from most textbooks. In 1864, Rebecca Lee Crumpler became the first Black woman in the United States to earn a medical degree. She graduated from the New England Female Medical College, a place that, until then, had never awarded such a title to a Black student. The Civil War was ending, and the nation was reeling from its wounds. Dr. Crumpler saw a need that few others dared to face. She traveled to Richmond, Virginia, working alongside the Freedmen's Bureau to care for newly emancipated men, women, and children. Many of her patients had never seen a doctor before. Disease, malnutrition, and trauma were everywhere, and prejudice followed her at every turn. White doctors and pharmacists questioned her credentials, sometimes refusing to fill her prescriptions. Still, Crumpler persisted, treating hundreds in makeshift clinics and private homes. She believed deeply in the power of knowledge and compassion. In 1883, she published a book of medical discourses, one of the first medical texts written by a Black American. The book focused on the health of women and children, offering advice and remedies to those who had long been denied access to care. Dr. Crumpler's work laid a foundation for public health in Black communities, work that would ripple forward into the next century, shaping medicine and justice in ways that textbooks too often ignore. Bass Reeves rode into the lawless borderlands of Indian Territory with a badge and a reputation that traveled faster than any wanted poster. Born enslaved in Arkansas in 1838, Reeves escaped to freedom during the Civil War and learned to track, shoot, and survive in the wilds of what would become Oklahoma. In 1875, he was sworn in as a deputy U.S. Marshal, the first Black lawman to patrol the vast, violent region west of the Mississippi. Reeves became a legend among outlaws and sheriffs alike. He was relentless, credited with nearly 3,000 arrests over 3 decades, more than any other marshal of his time. Some fugitives surrendered at the sound of his name. Others tried their luck and lost. Reeves was a master of disguise, slipping into outlaw camps dressed as a cowboy, farmer, or even a preacher, gathering information before making his move. His marksmanship was so precise that stories spread of him shooting the gun out of a criminal's hand without drawing blood. Court records and arrest ledgers from Fort Smith reveal a man who brought in murderers, thieves, and fugitives by the wagon load, often single-handed, sometimes outnumbered. Reeves's testimony helped convict some of the most dangerous men in the West. Yet, for all his service, his story faded from textbooks, replaced by myths of white lawmen and masked riders. The real Lone Ranger didn't wear a mask. He wore a star, rode tall, and enforced justice in a world that rarely offered it back. Bass Reeves proved that Black courage shaped the frontier, even when history tried to write him out. On a foggy May morning in 1862, Robert Smalls stepped onto the deck of the CSS Planter in Charleston Harbor. The ship was a Confederate transport, loaded with artillery and ammunition. Smalls, born enslaved, worked as the vessel's pilot. That night, While the white officers slept ashore, he gathered his family and the families of his fellow black crewmen. Quietly, they raised the Confederate and South Carolina flags, just as the real crew would have, and steered the planter past 5 heavily armed forts. Smalls signaled the correct codes at each checkpoint. By dawn, they had slipped through the harbor's last defenses and sailed straight into the arms of the Union Navy. He surrendered the planter and its valuable cargo, delivering not just himself, but 17 others to freedom. Smalls's daring didn't end on the water. His knowledge of Confederate positions proved invaluable to the Union war effort. After the war, Smalls bought his former owner's house and turned to politics. He was elected to the South Carolina State Legislature, then to the U.S. House of Representatives. Over 5 terms in Congress, Smalls championed public education, pushing for the first free compulsory schooling laws in his state. He fought for black voting rights and challenged laws meant to silence his community. Smalls's journey from enslaved pilot to lawmaker showed how courage could open the door to power, and how power could be used to build a better future for all children, not just the privileged few. Ella Baker believed in power that started at the roots, not the top. She spent decades traveling the back roads and city streets of the South, listening to people others ignored. As the national director of NAACP branches in the 1940s, Baker built local chapters by encouraging ordinary members to lead their own campaigns. She knew that real change didn't come from a single voice at a podium, but from thousands of voices rising together. In April 1960, Baker called students to Shaw University in North Carolina. The sit-ins had swept across lunch counters from Greensboro to Nashville, but the movement needed direction. Baker insisted the students meet as equals, not as followers. Over 3 days, they debated, planned, and voted, birthing the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. Baker's notes from that meeting show her urging them to trust their own instincts, not just the advice of established leaders. She often repeated, "Strong people don't need strong leaders." That idea shaped SNCC's structure: decentralized, flexible, and fiercely democratic. Instead of waiting for permission, SNCC activists organized voter registration drives and freedom rides, risking beatings and jail time across the Deep South. Baker's approach let young people take charge of their own destiny, and the results shook the country. Though she rarely stood in the spotlight, Baker's fingerprints are on every major victory of the 1960s civil rights era. Her field reports and conference minutes show a woman who believed in the capacity of regular people to build a movement that outlasted any single leader. Ella Baker's legacy isn't just in what she accomplished, it's in the generation she inspired to organize from the ground up, proving that the foundation of justice is always laid by many hands. In February 1951, a young black woman named Henrietta Lacks entered Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore with abdominal pain. Doctors diagnosed her with an aggressive cervical tumor. Without her knowledge or consent, surgeons removed samples of her cancer cells during treatment. These cells, labeled Hella from the first 2 letters of her first and last names, did something no other human cells had done before. They kept dividing, thriving in laboratory dishes long after Henrietta's death that October. HeLa cells became the first immortal human cell line. Scientists at Johns Hopkins shipped them to labs around the world. They were used to test the first polio vaccine, map genes, and unlock the secrets of cancer, viruses, and countless diseases. Over the next decades, HeLa cells powered more than 70,000 medical studies. They helped develop treatments for HIV, leukemia, and even contributed to COVID-19 research. Yet, while her cells transformed medicine, Henrietta Lacks's own name was kept out of the story. Her family only learned the truth in the 1970s, when researchers began contacting them for genetic information. For decades, they received no compensation, no recognition, and no say in how Henrietta's cells were used. Medical journals published HeLa's history without mentioning her identity. Only in the 21st century, after years of advocacy, did the Lax family secure agreements with the National Institutes of Health for some control over the use of her genetic information. The legacy of HeLa is twofold: a revolution in science built on an act of exploitation. Henrietta Lax's story forces medicine to confront questions of consent, race, and who benefits from scientific progress. Today, every vial of HeLa cells is a reminder that behind each breakthrough stands a person whose rights and dignity matter just as much as any discovery. Bayard Rustin moved through the heart of the civil rights movement with a quiet authority that few recognized, but none could match. In the summer of 1963, as the nation braced for a historic confrontation over equality, Rustin was the architect behind the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, the largest demonstration the country had ever seen. He spent months in a windowless office, surrounded by stacks of planning memos, train schedules, and phone lists. Rustin coordinated union partnerships, wrangled permits from city officials, and mapped out every bus route and water station for the 250,000 people expected to arrive. On August 28, 1963, nearly 250,000 marchers filled the National Mall. Their presence, a testament to Rustin's unmatched skill in coalition building and logistics. A lifelong Quaker and pacifist, Rustin shaped the movement's philosophy of nonviolent resistance. He brought the teachings of Gandhi to American soil, training activists in the discipline of peaceful protest. Rustin's influence stretched far beyond the headlines. He was a mentor to Martin Luther King Jr., a behind-the-scenes strategist who insisted that the movement's moral power came from its refusal to answer violence with violence. But Rustin's name rarely appeared in the textbooks. He was targeted by the FBI, trailed by government agents, and branded a threat for his earlier communist ties. Most damaging in the eyes of the era's leaders, he was openly gay. Some allies urged him to step back, fearing his identity would be used to discredit the cause. Rustin never denied who he was, but he also never stopped working, even when it meant fading into the background while others stood at the microphone. The March on Washington is remembered for Dr. King's soaring words, but it was Rustin's vision and tireless organizing that made the moment possible. His story is a reminder that the architects of change are not always the ones in the spotlight. Rustin's erasure was no accident. It was the result of a society unwilling to accept the full truth of who leads and how progress is made. Reclaiming his legacy means understanding that real power often moves unseen, shaping history from the margins and building movements that endure long after the crowd goes home. From Oscar Micheaux's fight to reclaim black voices in cinema to Bayard Rustin's strategic genius behind the March on Washington, this countdown has revealed 10 black heroes whose stories were long erased from school textbooks. At the top, the scale of Henrietta Lax's unwitting contribution to medical science and Rustin's orchestrated civil rights triumph highlight just how much history has overlooked. Across all 10 entries, one pattern stands out. These individuals not only broke barriers but shaped the very fabric of American life, whether in science, technology, law, or activism. Their exclusion wasn't due to lack of impact, but to systemic erasure. The ranking focused on lasting influence, historical omission, and how their legacies still touch us today. From the traffic light at every intersection to the cells that advanced modern medicine, the truth is, Black history is American history, and understanding these hidden heroes challenges us to see the full scope of innovation and courage that built the nation.